Welcome back to William on Watch. Recently, Secretary of State Marco Rubio testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the Senate Appropriations Committee, and used those opportunities to mislead the American people about the value of USAID. Now, as a U.S. Senator, prior to feeding his soul to his ambition, Rubio had on multiple occasions touted the importance of USAID. But like everyone else who has soiled their reputation by cravenly crawling into the gutter in pathetic hopes of a sleepover with Donald Trump, Rubio too disgraced himself. I have to be honest with you guys. I was once quite impressed with Marco. Though we've always been on different ideological tracks, I recall thinking back in 2016 that he could make a pretty decent president, a sort of pragmatic unifier. Then, not that long ago, I heard him echo Trump's lies about the 2020 election having been stolen, and I at once knew Marco had made some deeply troubling deal with the devil. Let's be clear. He has become just another dishonorable, immoral Trump zombie, and he has set on fire any hopes he ever had of becoming president in a post-Trump world. It's possible that when he sleeps, he's haunted by specters of starving, disease-ridden children whose fates were sealed when he slashed USAID contracts without, it seems, having any idea or any concern for how many would perish as a result. In this clip, Marco claims responsibility for the cancellation of 83% of USAID contracts, and Senator Merkley confronts Marco with the estimated deaths that have occurred as a result of funding cuts and contract cancellations and expected resultant future deaths.
His Doge team did a lot of cancellations very, very quickly, and it fired a lot of people. It wasn't clear to me whether that had your support or not.
The Doge team didn't do anything. I did it. I was the one that made the decisions. I went through contracts, literally spreadsheets, line by line. I remember being in a hotel, I believe in Guatemala, going through line by line on spreadsheets of contracts that were canceled, contracts that were approved, contracts that were amended. These are all contracts.
So in that case, I'll put the responsibility with you, since you're taking credit for it rather than with Elon Musk. But the Boston School of Public Health has a kind of a website where they post their estimated deaths as a result of the actions that were taken to dismantle USAID. And they're updating it continuously. So you go to it, the numbers keep changing. They have a one-year estimate, but they also have what they estimate has happened to today. And as of today, they estimate that the actions taken in putting USAID in the wood chipper, child malnutrition, 53,500 more deaths. And I'm rounding off because the numbers are continuously changing. Child diarrhea, 45,400 more deaths. Child pneumonia, 59,200 more deaths. Malaria, 25,100 more deaths. So what happened that weekend has resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of children. And the estimate for the end of this year is much, much higher. This happened because the law was not followed for consultation with Congress, analysis, bringing in experts, holding hearings. How do you kind of accept what you just put forward, that it was your action to cancel these contracts? Your contracts in this fashion, freezing fund, firing individuals, has resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of children.
That's false. That's fake. That's just not true. That's a study based on if we canceled every one of these programs permanently. Okay, and I'm reading it right here because I'm glad you brought it up. It assumes a near total freeze in U.S. foreign aid for HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and other diseases. There is not a total freeze. 85% of PEPFAR recipients are receiving their care right now.
Marco is lying to us straight up. Nearly all contracts have been eliminated. The administration can't change budget allocations, but it has reduced funding flows to a trickle. The administration formally announced the cancellation of 83 to over 90% of USAID's global contracts. Marco mentioned PEPFAR specifically. First, what is it? PEPFAR stands for the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, and it was launched in 2003 under George W. Bush to address the global HIV/AIDS epidemic, primarily in sub-Saharan Africa, and it provides funding for treatment and prevention programs. Marco's reference to 85% of PEPFAR patients receiving treatment is disingenuous at best, because the waiver that provides for the continuation of treatments is very narrowly written, and since USAID was primarily the facilitator of PEPFAR, and USAID has been effectively eliminated as its remaining functions were transferred to the Department of State, The program is totally dysfunctional and has been ever since it was restarted after having been shut down along with the rest of U.S. foreign aid at the beginning of Trump 2.0. So although 85% of PEPFAR patients might qualify for some level of treatment by Marco's math, it isn't being delivered at anywhere close to that level. PEPFAR barely has a pulse. And by the way, you'll notice Marco said nothing of the other diseases mentioned by Jeff Merkley. I'll put a link in the description below to the death estimator referenced by Merkley. In the upcoming clip, Rubio is responding to a serious dressing down he endured from Senator Chris Van Hollen. I've placed a link to the full interaction in the description below, and I strongly encourage you to check it out. Van Hollen does not sugarcoat it.
Please.
Well, I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue, but I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation.
Okay, Marco, let me explain how circumcisions in Mozambique benefit the United States of America. 3 large studies have shown that circumcision reduces infection rates of HIV/AIDS by between 51 and 60%. That's a huge and extremely cost-effective way of addressing an epidemic that is far more expensive to treat than it is to prevent. In terms of Mozambique, the prevalence of HIV/AIDS among those aged 15 and above was 12.5% in 2022. How does rampant disease in Mozambique affect us in the U.S. of A? Widespread, untreated infections create breeding grounds for drug-resistant strains and mutations, whether it's HIV, TB, or COVID. Investing in treatment and control abroad reduces the likelihood of new, more dangerous strains reaching the U.S., which is never further away from sub-Saharan Africa than an airplane ride.
We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means.
So Marco admits he has no understanding of what social cohesion in Mali means. But his ignorance didn't stop him from shredding contracts effectuating social cohesion in Mali, did it? Okay, Marco, school is back in session, buddy. Social cohesion positively impacts failed states, ethnic unrest, literacy, hunger, religious persecution, political corruption, and rampant disease, all of which provide fertile ground for terrorist groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Al-Shabaab in countries like Mali, Yemen, Mozambique, Niger, Somalia, and others. Social cohesion efforts create a less hospitable environment for such groups by working towards solutions for endemic social, economic, and health problems. As we know quite well from experience, empowered terrorist groups such as those mentioned ultimately make us less safe even here in the United States. Social cohesion is an application of what's known as soft power. When Al-Qaeda attacked the World Trade Center, we had to put boots on the ground in Afghanistan. It was too late to apply soft power. Yet soft power is far cheaper and safer for our troops than boots on the ground. And that, Marco, is why we invest in it. So what's clear is that Marco killed USAID programs without any clue of what those programs were created to accomplish or how many lives depended upon them. Neither did he care. He illegally crushed USAID without consulting Congress, which consultations might have provided insights and opportunities to amend or eliminate programs after thoughtful analysis. Apparently, Marco's idea of analysis was reading the name of a program or contract and slashing it if he didn't understand what that name meant. So yes, Marco proudly claims credit for tossing USAID, along with hundreds of thousands of children, into the wood chipper. Well done, Marco. In the next episode, we're going to examine Marco's stated plan to defy the courts and the Constitution. It's free to subscribe to the channel, and there's a link to do so right up here. If you got value from this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Until next time, fair winds.